In a small village at the edge of a great forest, there lived a young boy named Thomas who had always dreamed of adventure. He spent his days working in his grandfather's small bakery, but his mind was always somewhere far away, imagining distant lands and hidden treasures that waited to be discovered. Thomas was 12 years old with messy brown hair and curious green eyes that seemed to sparkle whenever he heard stories about explorers and their amazing journeys. His grandfather, a kind old man named Arthur, often told him tales of brave adventurers who had traveled through the mysterious forest that bordered their village, and Thomas would listen with great excitement, his heart beating fast with wonder. One rainy afternoon, while Thomas was cleaning the storage room behind the bakery, he discovered something strange hidden beneath a pile of old flour sacks. It was a wooden box covered in dust and cobwebs, and when he opened it, his hands began to tremble with excitement. Inside the box, he found an old piece of paper that had been folded many times, and when he carefully unfolded it, he realized it was a map. The map showed the forest, the village, and beyond them, something Thomas had never heard of before. There was a place marked with a red circle and the words, "The Hidden Valley," written in faded ink. Thomas stared at the map for a long time, his mind racing with questions. Who had drawn this map, and what secrets did the Hidden Valley hold? That evening, Thomas showed the map to his grandfather, and the old man's face turned pale when he saw it. Arthur sat down slowly in his wooden chair and let out a long sigh before he began to speak. He told Thomas that the map had belonged to his father, Thomas's great-grandfather, who had been a famous explorer in his youth. Many years ago, the great-grandfather had discovered the Hidden Valley, a magical place where it was said that a treasure of incredible value was kept safe from the world. Thomas listened with wide eyes as his grandfather continued the story. The great-grandfather had never returned to claim the treasure because he believed some things were meant to stay hidden, but he had kept the map, hoping that one day someone worthy would find it and complete the journey he had started. Arthur looked at his grandson with serious eyes and asked him what he planned to do with this discovery. Thomas did not hesitate. He told his grandfather that he wanted to find the Hidden Valley and see what was there. At first, Arthur shook his head and told Thomas that the journey was too dangerous for a young boy, but Thomas begged and pleaded, promising that he would be careful and that he would return safely. After many hours of discussion, Arthur finally agreed, but only on one condition: Thomas would not go alone. The next morning, Thomas went to find his two best friends, a girl named Sarah and a boy named Marcus, to tell them about his discovery. Sarah was a clever girl with long black hair who loved solving puzzles and reading books about ancient mysteries, while Marcus was a strong and brave boy who was always ready for adventure. When Thomas showed them the map and told them about the Hidden Valley, both of them immediately agreed to join him on the journey. The three friends spent several days preparing for their adventure. They gathered food, water, rope, and other supplies they thought they might need. Sarah studied the map carefully and made notes about the path they would need to follow through the forest, while Marcus practiced his skills with a wooden sword in case they encountered any danger. Thomas visited his grandfather every day to learn more about what his great-grandfather had experienced during his own journey to the Hidden Valley. Arthur told Thomas many things that would help them on their way. He spoke of a river that they would need to cross, a cave where they should rest, and a mountain pass that was very difficult to climb. He also warned Thomas about the creatures that lived in the deepest parts of the forest. There were wolves, bears, and according to old legends, something even more mysterious that guarded the entrance to the Hidden Valley. Finally, the day of departure arrived, and the whole village came to say goodbye to the three brave young adventurers. Thomas's grandfather hugged him tightly and whispered words of encouragement in his ear, telling him to be brave, but also to be wise. Sarah's parents kissed her on the forehead and made her promise to write them a letter as soon as she returned, while Marcus's older brothers slapped him on the back and told him to bring back something impressive. As the sun rose over the trees, Thomas, Sarah, and Marcus walked out of the village and entered the forest. The trees were tall and green, and birds sang beautiful songs from the branches above. Thomas held the map in his hands and looked at the path ahead. He felt both excited and nervous, knowing that a great adventure was about to begin. The first part of their journey was easy and pleasant. The forest path was clear, and the weather was warm and sunny. They walked for many hours, talking and laughing as they went, stopping occasionally to eat some of the bread and cheese they had brought. Sarah pointed out interesting plants and animals along the way, sharing facts she had learned from her books, while Marcus told funny stories that made everyone laugh. As the afternoon turned to evening, the forest began to change. The trees grew closer together, blocking out much of the sunlight, and the path became harder to follow. Thomas looked at the map and realized they were approaching the first challenge his grandfather had mentioned, the river that they would need to cross. He could hear the sound of rushing water in the distance, and his heart beat faster with anticipation. When they finally reached the river, all three of them stopped and stared in amazement. It was much wider and deeper than they had expected, with water that flowed fast and powerful. There was no bridge, no boat, and the current looked very dangerous. Sarah studied the map while Marcus looked up and down the riverbank for another way across. But Thomas just stood there, wondering how they would ever get to the other side. The sun was setting, and they needed to make a decision soon. They could either try to find a way across or set up camp and wait until morning. Thomas looked at his friends and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had come too far to give up now, and somehow they would find a way to continue their journey to the hidden valley. The three friends stood by the rushing river as the last light of day faded behind the trees. They knew they had to make camp for the night and try to cross in the morning when they could see better. Marcus gathered some dry wood and started a small fire while Sarah unpacked their food and blankets, and Thomas sat on a rock, still staring at the powerful water and thinking about what to do next. That night, as they ate their simple dinner of bread, cheese, and dried fruit, they discussed different ideas for crossing the river. Marcus suggested they could build a raft from fallen trees, but Sarah pointed out that they did not have the right tools for such a task. Thomas remembered something his grandfather had told him. Somewhere along the river, there might be a place where large rocks formed a natural bridge across the water. Early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, the three friends began walking along the riverbank, searching for the rocks that Thomas had mentioned. They walked for almost 2 hours, climbing over fallen trees and pushing through thick bushes, until Sarah suddenly shouted with excitement. She had spotted them, a line of large, flat rocks that stretched across the river like stepping stones. The rocks were wet and slippery, and the spaces between them were quite wide, but it was definitely possible to cross if they were very careful. Marcus volunteered to go first, testing each rock to make sure it was stable. He jumped from rock to rock with surprising skill, and when he reached the other side, he turned around and waved to his friends with a big smile on his face. Sarah went next. She was more cautious than Marcus, taking her time and holding her arms out for balance as she crossed. At one point, her foot slipped on a wet rock, and Thomas shouted in fear, but Sarah quickly caught herself and continued on safely. When she made it to the other side, she let out a huge sigh of relief. Now it was Thomas's turn. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the first rock, feeling the cold spray of the river on his face. The sound of the rushing water was very loud, and for a moment he felt dizzy and afraid. But then he thought of the hidden valley and the treasure that waited for him. And he found the courage to continue. Step by step, rock by rock, he made his way across, and when he finally jumped onto dry land on the other side, his friends cheered and patted him on the back. They continued their journey through the forest, which became darker and more mysterious as they went deeper. The trees here were ancient and enormous, with trunks so wide that all three of them together could not wrap their arms around them. Strange sounds came from the shadows, and more than once Thomas thought he saw something moving between the trees, watching them. Sarah checked the map frequently to make sure they were going in the right direction. According to the old paper, they should reach the cave his grandfather had mentioned by nightfall. This cave would provide shelter and safety, and it was also the place where Thomas's great-grandfather had left a message for anyone who might follow in his footsteps. As the afternoon sun filtered weakly through the thick canopy of leaves above, the three friends came upon a strange clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing stood an old stone statue covered in moss and vines, and it seemed to be a figure of a woman holding a lantern. Sarah examined the statue with great interest, wondering who had placed it here and why. Thomas looked at the map again and noticed something he had not seen before. There was a small drawing of a statue near the path they were following, and next to it were words that said, "Follow the light." He showed this to his friends, and they all looked at the statue's lantern, trying to understand what it meant. Marcus was the one who figured it out. The lantern in the statue's hand was pointing in a specific direction toward a narrow path that they had not noticed before. This path was almost completely hidden by bushes and fallen branches, and without the statue's guidance, they would have walked right past it. Feeling excited by their discovery, the three friends pushed through the vegetation and followed the hidden path. The path led them down a steep hill and into a valley filled with beautiful wildflowers of every color. Butterflies danced in the air, and a gentle stream flowed through the grass, sparkling in the afternoon light. It was the most beautiful place Thomas had ever seen, and for a moment he wondered if this was the hidden valley. But Sarah shook her head and pointed to the map, showing that they still had a long way to go. As they crossed the flower valley, they heard a strange sound coming from somewhere nearby. It was a soft, whimpering noise, like an animal in pain. Marcus held up his hand, signaling for the others to stay quiet, and slowly crept toward the sound. Thomas and Sarah followed close behind, their hearts beating with nervous anticipation. Behind a large bush, they found a young fox, with its leg caught in an old rusty trap. The poor creature looked up at them with frightened eyes, trembling with fear and pain. Sarah immediately knelt down beside the fox and spoke to it in a gentle voice, trying to calm it while Marcus carefully worked to open the trap. After several tense minutes, Marcus finally managed to free the fox's leg. The injury was not too serious, and Sarah used some of the bandages they had brought to wrap the wound carefully. The fox seemed to understand that they were trying to help, and it stopped trembling and let Sarah tend to its leg. When they were finished, they expected the fox to run away into the forest, but instead, it stood up and looked at them with intelligent eyes. Then it began to walk slowly in the direction they had been heading, stopping occasionally to look back at them, as if asking them to follow. Thomas, Sarah, and Marcus exchanged surprised glances. It seemed the fox wanted to show them something. They followed the fox through the flower valley and up another hill. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they finally saw what they had been looking for. There, at the base of a tall cliff, was the entrance to a cave, dark and mysterious. The fox sat at the entrance and looked at them one more time before disappearing into the forest. Thomas whispered a quiet thank you to their new friend and then turned to face the cave. He could feel that something important waited for them inside, something that would bring them one step closer to the hidden valley. Marcus lit a torch they had brought, and the three friends walked slowly into the darkness. The cave was cool and damp, and their footsteps echoed off the stone walls. They followed the main passage for several minutes until they came to a large chamber where they decided to make camp for the night. On one wall of the chamber, carved into the stone, was a message left by Thomas's great-grandfather many years ago. The words had faded with time, but Thomas could still read them by the light of the torch. The message said, "To whoever follows this path, remember that the greatest treasure is not gold or jewels, but the journey itself and the friends who travel with you. Be brave, be kind, and never give up." Thomas read the message out loud to his friends, and they all felt a warm feeling in their hearts. They had faced challenges together, they had helped a creature in need, and they had grown closer as friends. Whatever waited for them in the hidden valley, they knew they would face it together, and that was what truly mattered. The next morning, the three friends woke up early in the cool darkness of the cave. They ate a quick breakfast of the last of their bread and some apples they had picked along the way, and then prepared to continue their journey. Thomas looked at his great-grandfather's message one more time, feeling a connection to the brave explorer who had come this way so many years ago. Sarah studied the map by the light of Marcus's torch and discovered that the cave had another exit on the opposite side. This passage would lead them through the mountain instead of having to climb over it, saving them many hours of difficult travel. The three friends gathered their supplies and walked deeper into the cave, following the narrow passage that wound through the rock. The passage was dark and sometimes so narrow that they had to squeeze through sideways. Strange formations of rock hung from the ceiling and grew up from the floor, creating shapes that looked like frozen waterfalls and ancient trees. Sarah was fascinated by these formations and explained to her friends how they were created by water dripping slowly over thousands of years. After walking for what felt like forever, they began to see a faint light ahead. The light grew brighter and brighter as they continued, and finally they emerged from the cave into the most spectacular sight they had ever seen. They were standing on a ledge high up on the side of the mountain, and spread out below them was a vast landscape of forests, rivers, and distant mountains. Thomas looked at the map and then at the view before them. According to the map, the hidden valley was just beyond a range of low mountains that he could see in the distance. They were getting close, and the excitement in his heart grew stronger with every passing moment. The path down from the ledge was steep and dangerous, with loose rocks that crumbled under their feet and thorny bushes that scratched their legs. Marcus went first, finding the safest route, while Thomas helped Sarah when the path became too difficult. By the time they reached the bottom, the sun was high in the sky, and they were tired, thirsty, and hungry. They found a small stream and stopped to rest, refilling their water containers and washing the dust from their faces. While they rested, Sarah noticed something unusual about the rocks near the stream. There were markings carved into them, symbols that looked very old and mysterious. She copied these symbols into a small notebook she carried, hoping to figure out what they meant later. As they continued their journey through the forest at the base of the mountain, they began to notice that they were not alone. There were sounds in the trees, rustling noises that seemed to follow them wherever they went. Marcus gripped his wooden sword tightly, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. Suddenly, from behind a large oak tree, a figure stepped out onto the path in front of them. It was an old woman with long gray hair and bright blue eyes that sparkled with an inner light. She was dressed in simple clothes made from animal skins and carried a walking stick carved from a twisted branch. She looked at the three friends with a curious expression on her wrinkled face. Thomas felt his heart jump in surprise, but the old woman did not seem threatening. She smiled at them and asked where they were going, in a voice that was surprisingly gentle and kind. Thomas hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should tell this stranger about their quest, but something about her made him feel that he could trust her. He told her about the map, about his great-grandfather, and about their journey to find the hidden valley. The old woman listened carefully, nodding her head from time to time, and when Thomas finished his story, she let out a long, thoughtful sigh. She told them that she had lived in this forest for many years and that she knew about the hidden valley. It was a real place, not just a legend, and it held secrets that few people could imagine. The old woman invited them to her home, a small cottage hidden among the trees, where she gave them food and warm tea. As they ate, she told them more about the hidden valley and the guardian that protected it. According to her, the valley was home to an ancient creature, a great wolf with silver fur and golden eyes, who had guarded the treasure for hundreds of years. Anyone who wished to enter the valley must first prove themselves worthy to this guardian. Sarah asked how someone could prove themselves worthy, and the old woman smiled mysteriously. She said that the guardian could see into a person's heart and would know if they were pure and good. Those who came seeking the treasure for selfish reasons would be turned away or worse, but those who came with honest intentions and kind hearts would be welcomed. The three friends looked at each other, wondering if they were worthy. They had come seeking adventure and treasure, but they had also helped the injured fox and had shown courage and kindness throughout their journey. Thomas hoped that would be enough to satisfy the guardian. Before they left, the old woman gave them a gift. It was a small silver pendant in the shape of a wolf's head, hanging on a leather cord. She told Thomas to wear it around his neck and to show it to the guardian when they met. She said it would help the guardian understand that they had been sent by a friend. Thomas thanked her many times and promised to return one day to tell her about what they found. With renewed energy and hope, the three friends continued their journey toward the low mountains. They walked until the sun began to set, then made camp in a sheltered spot between two large boulders. As they sat around their small fire, eating the last of the food the old woman had given them, they talked about what might be waiting for them in the hidden valley. Marcus wondered if the treasure was gold and jewels, piles of coins and precious stones that would make them rich beyond their dreams. Sarah thought it might be something more valuable than money, perhaps ancient books full of lost knowledge or magical artifacts from a forgotten time. Thomas was not sure what to expect, but he remembered his great-grandfather's message. The greatest treasure was the journey itself and the friends who traveled with him. That night, Thomas had a strange dream. In the dream, he was standing in a beautiful valley filled with flowers and trees, and in front of him stood the great silver wolf the old woman had described. The wolf looked at him with its golden eyes and seemed to be asking him a question without words. Thomas felt that the wolf wanted to know why he had come and what he truly desired. In the dream, Thomas answered honestly. He said he had come because he wanted adventure. Because he wanted to complete the journey his great-grandfather had started, and because he wanted to share this experience with his friends. He said he did not care about gold or jewels. He cared about discovering something amazing and making memories that would last forever. The wolf seemed satisfied with his answer and bowed its great silver head. Then Thomas woke up, and it was morning. He told Sarah and Marcus about his dream, and they agreed that it felt like a sign. They believed they would meet the guardian soon, and that everything would be all right. With hopeful hearts and eager steps, they packed their supplies and began the final part of their journey toward the hidden valley. The low mountains were closer now, and Thomas could see a narrow pass between two peaks that seemed to match the drawing on the map. Somewhere beyond that pass, the hidden valley waited, holding secrets that had been kept for generations. He touched the silver pendant around his neck and felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The climb up to the mountain pass was the most difficult part of the journey so far. The path was rocky and steep, and the three friends had to help each other many times to continue moving forward. The air grew colder as they climbed higher, and Thomas could see his breath forming small clouds in front of his face. By midday, they had reached the entrance to the narrow pass. It was a gap between two towering rock walls that seemed to reach up into the sky, and the path through was dark and shadowy even in the middle of the day. Strange sounds echoed through the pass. Sounds that might have been the wind or might have been something else entirely. Marcus took the lead with his wooden sword ready, while Sarah walked in the middle, checking the map to make sure they were going the right way. Thomas walked at the back, looking over his shoulder frequently to make sure nothing was following them. The pass twisted and turned like a snake, and it was impossible to see very far ahead. After about an hour of walking through the narrow pass, they came to a place where the path split into 3 directions. Each path looked exactly the same, dark and mysterious, and there was no marking on the map to show which one they should take. Sarah studied the map carefully but shook her head. This choice was not shown on the old paper. Thomas looked at the 3 paths, trying to figure out what to do. Then he noticed something strange about the rocks on the left path. There were scratch marks on the stone, the kind of marks that might be made by large claws. He pointed this out to his friends, and they discussed what it might mean. Marcus thought the claw marks meant danger, and that they should avoid that path, but Sarah had a different idea. She remembered what the old woman had said about the guardian wolf and wondered if the marks had been left by the guardian to show the right way. Thomas thought Sarah might be right, and after a long discussion, they decided to take the left path. The path led them deeper into the mountain, and the darkness grew so thick that Marcus had to light a torch to see where they were going. The walls of the passage were covered with more scratch marks and also with strange paintings that looked very old. The paintings showed wolves and mountains and what appeared to be a valley filled with light. As they walked, the passage began to slope downward, and Thomas could feel the air becoming warmer. He could also hear a sound that had not been there before, a low rumbling noise that seemed to come from somewhere ahead. Sarah whispered that it might be an underground river or a waterfall, but Marcus looked worried and gripped his sword tighter. The passage opened suddenly into an enormous cavern, and all 3 friends stopped in amazement at what they saw. The cavern was filled with a soft blue light that seemed to come from the rocks themselves, and in the center of the cavern was a pool of crystal-clear water. Standing beside the pool, watching them with ancient golden eyes, was the guardian. The silver wolf was the most magnificent creature Thomas had ever seen. It was larger than any wolf he had imagined, as tall as a horse and covered with fur that shone like moonlight. Its eyes held a wisdom that seemed as old as the mountains, and when it looked at Thomas, he felt as though the wolf could see everything in his heart. Thomas remembered the silver pendant the old woman had given him and pulled it out from under his shirt. The wolf's eyes moved to the pendant, and something changed in its expression. A softening, a recognition. It took a step toward them, and Thomas heard Sarah catch her breath beside him. But then something unexpected happened. Marcus, thinking the wolf was about to attack, raised his wooden sword and moved forward to protect his friends. The wolf's eyes narrowed, and it let out a low growl that echoed through the cavern. Thomas knew immediately that Marcus had made a mistake. Thomas stepped forward quickly, placing himself between Marcus and the wolf. He spoke in a calm voice, telling the guardian that they meant no harm and that they had come in peace. He explained that Marcus was only trying to protect them because he was a loyal friend, not because he wanted to fight. He asked the guardian to forgive them and to give them a chance to prove they were worthy. The wolf studied Thomas for a long moment, its golden eyes searching his face. Then, slowly, it sat down and tilted its great silver head to one side, as if waiting for something. Thomas understood. The guardian wanted to see what kind of person he truly was. Thomas told the wolf everything. He spoke about his grandfather's stories and his great-grandfather's map, about his dream of adventure and his love for his friends. He told the wolf about the river crossing, the injured fox they had helped, and the old woman in the forest. He explained that he did not care about gold or jewels, but wanted to complete the journey and see what his great-grandfather had seen. When he finished speaking, the cavern was silent. The wolf continued to watch him, and Thomas felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the cool air. Then, something wonderful happened. The wolf rose to its feet and bowed its head to Thomas, just as it had done in his dream. Sarah and Marcus watched in amazement as the wolf turned and walked toward the far wall of the cavern. There, hidden in the shadows, was another passage, and the wolf stood beside it, waiting for them to follow. Thomas let out a breath he had not known he was holding and motioned for his friends to come with him. As they walked past the guardian, Sarah whispered a thank you to the wolf, and Marcus lowered his head in respect and apology. The wolf seemed to understand and made a soft sound, almost like a purr, as they passed. Thomas felt a surge of hope and excitement. They had proven themselves worthy, and now they would finally see the hidden valley. The passage led upward, and soon Thomas could see light ahead, real sunlight, warm and golden. They walked faster, eager to see what waited at the end, and finally, they emerged from the darkness into a sight that took their breath away. The hidden valley spread out before them like a painting from a dream. Green meadows covered with flowers stretched in every direction. Waterfalls tumbled down from high cliffs into sparkling rivers, and animals of every kind moved peacefully through the grass. In the center of the valley, surrounded by ancient trees, stood a building made of white stone that gleamed in the sunlight. Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes as he looked at this beautiful place. His great-grandfather had stood here, in this exact spot, and had seen the same incredible view. He understood now why the old man had kept the map and hoped that someone worthy would one day complete the journey. This valley was too wonderful to remain completely forgotten. The three friends walked down into the valley, their feet leaving trails in the soft grass. Birds sang in the trees, and the air smelled of flowers and fresh water. They made their way toward the white stone building, wondering what they would find inside and what secrets it might hold. The guardian wolf followed them at a distance, watching over them as they explored the valley. Thomas had the feeling that the wolf had been alone here for a very long time, and was perhaps happy to have visitors who came with good hearts. He made a silent promise to himself that he would protect the secret of this place and only share it with those who deserved to know. The white stone building stood before them like a temple from ancient times, with tall pillars and a roof that seemed to touch the sky. Steps led up to a large doorway that was open and welcoming, and Thomas could see that the inside was filled with the same soft golden light that covered the entire valley. The three friends climbed the steps together, their hearts beating fast with anticipation. When they stepped through the doorway, they found themselves in a magnificent hall with walls covered in paintings and shelves filled with objects they had never seen before. There were books bound in leather, sculptures made of crystal, instruments of music and science, and so many other treasures that they could not take them all in at once. Sarah immediately went to the shelves of books, her eyes wide with wonder. She carefully took one down and opened it, discovering that it was written in an old language she could not read, but the pictures inside showed amazing things: flying machines, cities beneath the sea, and gardens that grew in the clouds. She realized these were the dreams and inventions of people who had lived long ago, preserved in this hidden place for all time. Marcus found a room filled with weapons and armor, but not the kind used for war. These were tools of protection, shields that could stop any blow and armor as light as cloth. There were also beautiful swords and bows that seemed to have been made for ceremony and celebration rather than battle. Marcus ran his fingers along the polished metal and felt a deep respect for the craftsmen who had created such wonders. Thomas walked through the hall until he came to a special room at the very back of the building. This room was smaller than the others, with only a single object inside, a pedestal in the center, and on the pedestal, a golden chest. He approached slowly, knowing somehow that this was what his great-grandfather had come to see. With trembling hands, Thomas lifted the lid of the golden chest and looked inside. At first, he was confused, because the chest appeared to be empty. Then he noticed something at the bottom, a small mirror, perfectly round, in a frame of silver leaves. He picked up the mirror and looked into it, expecting to see his own reflection, but the mirror showed him something else. Instead of his face, he saw images moving across the surface like a living painting. He saw his village, his grandfather's bakery, and his friends' families waiting for them to return. He saw the forest they had traveled through, the river they had crossed, and the cave where they had slept. He saw the old woman smiling, the fox running through the meadow, and the guardian wolf watching over the valley. Then he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. He saw himself, but older, standing in front of a crowd of people and telling them a story. The people were listening with excitement in their eyes, just as Thomas had listened to his grandfather's stories. And sitting in the front row, grown up but still recognizable, were Sarah and Marcus. Thomas understood. The treasure was not gold or jewels, or even the wonderful objects in this building. The real treasure was the story he would tell, the adventure he had lived, and the inspiration he would give to others to follow their dreams. The mirror showed him his future, a future where he would share his experiences and encourage others to seek their own adventures. He called for his friends, and they came running. When they looked into the mirror, they each saw something different, something personal and meaningful. Sarah saw herself surrounded by books she had written, sharing the knowledge she had gained with the world. Marcus saw himself teaching young people how to be brave and kind, how to protect those who could not protect themselves. They spent many hours exploring the hidden valley, discovering its secrets and marveling at its beauty. They played in the meadows, swam in the crystal rivers, and talked with wonder about everything they had experienced. The guardian wolf stayed near them, sometimes playing like a puppy, and sometimes watching them with those wise, golden eyes. When evening came, they sat on a hillside and watched the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in colors of orange, pink, and purple. Thomas thought about how far they had come and how much they had learned about themselves and each other. They had started this journey as friends, but now they were something more. They were companions who had shared an incredible experience that would bond them forever. The next morning, they knew it was time to go home. Their families would be worried, and they had promised to return safely. The guardian wolf led them to another path, a secret way out of the valley that would take them back to the forest much faster than the way they had come. Before they left, Thomas knelt before the wolf and thanked it for everything. The wolf touched its nose to his forehead in a gesture of blessing and farewell. The journey home was easier than they expected. The path was clear, the weather was kind, and they traveled with light hearts and happy memories. They found the old woman's cottage and stopped to tell her about everything they had seen, and she laughed with joy and hugged them all. She said she had known they were worthy from the moment she saw them. When they finally emerged from the forest and saw their village in the distance, they let out a cheer and began to run. Their families saw them coming and rushed out to meet them, tears of happiness flowing down their faces. Thomas's grandfather held him tight and whispered that he was proud of him, so proud of the brave young man he had become. That evening, the whole village gathered to hear the story of their adventure. Thomas, Sarah, and Marcus took turns telling different parts, describing the river crossing, the mysterious cave, the old woman, the guardian wolf, and the hidden valley. The villagers listened with amazement and wonder, and the children's eyes sparkled with dreams of their own adventures. Thomas kept his promise to protect the secret of the hidden valley. He did not tell anyone exactly where it was or how to find it, knowing that only those who were truly worthy should discover it for themselves. But he did show them the silver pendant the old woman had given him, and he told them that if they were brave, kind, and true to their friends, they would find their own treasures wherever they went. Years passed, and Thomas grew up to become a storyteller, just as the mirror had shown him. He traveled to many places, sharing the tale of the hidden valley and inspiring others to follow their dreams. Sarah became a scholar who wrote many books and helped people understand the wonders of the world, while Marcus became a teacher who trained young people to be brave and honorable. They never forgot their adventure, and they remained the closest of friends for the rest of their lives. Every year, on the anniversary of their journey, they would meet together and remember everything they had experienced. They would laugh about the river crossing, smile about the helpful fox, and speak with respect about the guardian wolf and the beautiful hidden valley. And sometimes, late at night, Thomas would take out the silver pendant and hold it in his hand, remembering the incredible journey that had changed his life forever. He would think about his great-grandfather, who had made the journey long before him, and he would wonder if someday, perhaps, another young adventurer would find the old map and follow the path to the hidden valley. He knew that the greatest treasure was not something you could hold in your hands or keep in a chest. It was the memories you made, the friends you loved, and the courage you found inside yourself when you needed it most. That was the lesson of the hidden valley, and it was a treasure that would last forever. And so the story of Thomas, Sarah, and Marcus became a legend in their village, told from generation to generation, inspiring young people to dream big dreams and seek their own adventures. For in every heart, there is a hidden valley waiting to be discovered, a treasure of courage and friendship that belongs to anyone brave enough to search for it.